In this edition of Artistic Horizons,
life-sized images of birds.
I look at a lot of these pieces as a scientific experiment where you have the series of variables and they all have to be completed just right to get the right result.
The healing power of creative expression.
I'm an artist. That's how I make my living. That's all I do to make a living. That's all I want to do.
A landmark bridge with a story.
Kind of nice that people are kind of recognizing that we have it and that there's a value to it and there's a lot of history there.
It's all ahead on this edition of Artistic Horizons.
Hello, I'm Mark Cernero, and this is Artistic Horizons. Printmaker John Costin creates detailed life-size portraits of birds. Although it's a lengthy, challenging process, the end result is well worth it. We visit the artist in Tampa, Florida to find out more.
One question I get a lot from people when they see my work, they look at it and say, well, why do you do etchings? Why not do a painting and do reproductions? Why not do that? And I tell them that they're not the same. There's certain visual qualities that etchings have that these other processes don't have.
Most people do not know what etchings are and what is involved. So I just say, well, he's kind of like a modern day Audubon. What Audubon did with plates with birds, John makes his birds life size. They're all hand painted. They're extremely, extremely detailed because he goes out in the field and he studies feather patterns, leg patterns, like for example, the sandhill crane that he just did. He spent 40 hours drawing those legs. So I would tell people if you want something very detailed and bright and beautiful, that you need to go see my husband's work.
My favorite thing about the work that John does is being able to just see him create it. It is incredible to me to watch something start as an idea and just watch that idea come to life. It is watching something magnificent unfold. It's like this magical side of art that I get to bear witness to.
We're in Ybor City. This is sort of the outskirts of Ybor. This building was constructed probably about 1904, 1905, and this building was a dry goods store. In the late 70s, I was an electrician, and I had a great career there if I wanted to go that direction. But I always had an interest in art and went to school at USF. And while I was there, one of the classes I'd taken was printmaking.
I met John 24 years ago, and it still blows me away. The things that this man can do that I've never seen anybody else do. And when other printmakers see his work, they are overwhelmed that he's using, large plates, making birds life-size, multiple plates, and hand coloring them as well. So I'm his biggest fan, I believe.
I like large-scale etchings. I like the intensity of them. Something you rarely see. Most artists that do etchings, they're of this scale, small scale, because they're so intense to work on. All the technical things that you have to do a plate that size. To work large is much more challenging.
One of the most interesting things that I have learned working here and being a watercolor artist and assistant is color theory. The way that John knows colors so intricately blows me away, just on top of all of his other skills. The colors that he uses, down to the shades of black, are so specific so that they really create a depth, a dimension to these birds that brings them to life, that really makes them pop off of the paper.
I look at a lot of these pieces as a scientific experiment where you have the series of variables and they all have to be completed just right to get the right result. So I document everything. That way somebody can come behind me that I've worked with and trained and can achieve the same results as long as they adhere to my notes that I take.
With every bird that we work on, John and Janet share their knowledge and interesting things about them. Most of them are life-size, so I get to see these birds up close in his etchings. So my knowledge of birds has really grown.
My interest in birds started when I was young. Our family lived in Blue Ridge, Georgia. We had a farm there. Because of that, I was exposed to a lot of different birds in the area, and that piqued my interest. When we moved to Florida, I had the chance to see a lot of these larger species of birds. That created an even stronger interest in birds, seeing these up front, close and personal.
It's kind of weird to be emotional about birds because before I met John, I did not know much about birds.
I feel that when you look at a piece with just one subject like that, you empathize with it more so. You're not just a distant observer. You're there in that bird's space. It takes on a character, a personality. One of my goals is for the viewer to connect with that subject matter. And that's one of the reasons why I just use one bird. I'm hoping that maybe indirectly from them connecting with that bird, they might have more of a care about the environment they live in.
It amazes me, some people will say, oh, well, is it just a print? Because they see that it's signed and numbered. No. It's a handmade piece of art. There's nothing done with a camera or a computer. It's all handmade. It's fine art, and it's amazing.
In addition to my own work, I've been collecting antique prints for 30 years. I have an interest in how other naturalists approach that. Why did they do it? How did they do it? And I feel that I want to add to that with my work. That's one of my goals, knowing all these things that have happened before me and then adding my own thumbprint on there, a contemporary view.
And now for the Artist Quote of the Week.
For artist and musician Ramblin' Randy Battaglia, creative expression provides solace. Living out of a van, he travels place to place, finding opportunities to explore his craft. We head to Virginia for the story.
I'm an artist. That's how I make my living. That's all I do to make a living. That's all I want to do. That's all I think about. I dream about it.
Randy came by my store about a little over a month ago, walked in and said, I'd like to do some painting for you. And I said, I don't need anyone to paint. Show me something that you do. And he said, I'm homeless. I have nothing to show you. He was crossing the street and he looked quite forlorn, to say the least. His head was down and nobody wanted him to work. And I started screaming at him, come back, come back. I want you to do my windows. He said, give me a picture of something and I'll paint it. And I gave him some pictures of hydrangeas, and this is what he did. And I said, I want butterflies. I want them to be kind of scattered around my window. And he started painting the butterflies. Everything was freehand. And little by little, I have found business owners who have been really excited to have him do their windows, do their murals on their buildings. He's a true artist.
She keeps getting me work and I keep saying why, and she says I'm her project. That, I was homeless and I touched her heart, and I didn't try to, I just wanted a job, man. I am Randy Battaglia, and I am an artist, musician, writer, inventor. I can do anything in art: acrylics, oils, oil pastels, pastel pencils, pen, ink. Back on my feet, I'm back working. I like to work. I get up in the morning. I don't like sitting behind a truck or in a truck or in a van all day. And I came here to start over. I'm a rambler. My name is Ramblin' Randy, and it's in my bones to travel around. I need some adventure in my life. I'm sitting in this truck most of the time, and when you're living in your vehicle, unless you're in a campground or something, you can't really move around. This is how I begin my prayers. I think of prayers like incense to God. The same with smudging. The split feather, I take it out. It's very important, and I'll tap it on the back sometimes while I'm praying, kind of like a little drum beat type thing. The spirit world is very slow. You pray, and sometimes your prayers are guaranteed if you pray in promises of God, but some of them may take weeks or even years. But as long as you don't give up, it's guaranteed. We're in Virginia Beach. This is a mural I painted here for a buddy of mine named Jeff. He said he wanted the streets of Philadelphia. And then he started explaining to me what it was kind of like and all. We didn't have any real photos, so I just kind of thought of Philly in my head, and this is what I came up with. And a lot of these things on here, like the Beloved Theater and Isis Beauty Salon, and All Our Supply, and all these things are pretty much real places, or at least were at one time. Favorite part is the dog. I like the dog. Second favorite, I guess, is just the center part there. I like that center part with the line coming out of Philadelphia cold cuts and whatnot, and it's got a lot of folks. And you got cops, and you got the corners of the streets, and there's a lot of action there. There's a lot more action everywhere else here and there, but that's like the center. But I go to all my murals eventually and just remember what it was like and seeing what came out of my mind. I like it. I really do appreciate Jeff for doing that for me. It's a pretty hard time in my life. I cried every day when I was in here. He was always there, putting his arm around me and gave me a prayer. I guess in a way it's kind of a heartbreaking mural, only because of the time. But you make it through. Pain doesn't ever leave, you just get used to it. I'm tired of traveling, but I don't know how to settle down either. That's the thing. I think about leaving every day, going somewhere else and getting on the road again. But if I do, I don't think I'll ever get a place to stay. Yeah, I come out here to paint. I don't have a place to paint, so I'm painting under this here shed out in the woods. And I like the woods. I look in the woods out here and I see nothing but just heaven. I want to be in them. There. Yeah, that's your world. You create it. And it's all up to your discipline as to how quick it's done or how good it's done. As you can see, I'm building on this shadow here, but you can overdo it so quickly, and you're setting up with this dark here so that you can come back in with the lights in the dark to show the depth of the petals. And then even under the lips of the petals, you might want to go a little darker. Truly, a canvas is your world. There are people who don't know how to paint at all, but they can grab a brush and they can go to town. As long as you got a little bit of depth and light and dark, you can make a painting. It might be famous like Grandma Moses. Art is it's the biggest part of my life, but music is a part of me too, so I have to do it. I get up in the morning, I don't have a care. I don't even fret about combing my hair. It gives me a chance to be with people and they kind of accept me a little bit. It's kind of weird, it's kind of like my only time where I'm able to really kind of fit in and talk to people. I don't want me no house or no automobile. I don't like the way bills make me feel. I'm not chasing after the American dream. I'm living it all for real. It's a very lonely life living like this. When you are like me and you just don't fit in. I want to, but it's very hard. Homeless people can be some of the kindest people that you ever saw. They're homeless, they're stinking, their hair's all matted and hungry all the time. And as far as sticking with you, homeless people will stick with you wherever you go. Going to anywhere. When I get to where I am, if I look for a friend, he or she too will have a road with no end. I don't know, about 3 years now I've been gradually going up in drinking, and it's been increasing, and I can't stand to drink, but I'm drinking anyway. Maybe homelessness has, the loneliness has a lot to do with that, maybe. I know that when I do drink, the first couple of drinks I feel great and I'm happy, and then after that it's just kind of like it's no longer a happy thing, and drinking just a drink, and it's kind of scary. I'm not afraid of anything, but that I'm kind of afraid of. You gotta love them Jets. They're my backup. That's the only band I got at the moment. I'm tired of rambling. I am Ramblin' Randy, the original. And I love rambling. And I'm gonna ramble. I'm a vagabond. Eventually I'll ramble again, but I gotta have a home base.
Now here's a look at this month's fun fact.
The Sideaway Bridge in Cleveland, Ohio has a story to tell. Completed in 1930, it was closed after a period of racial unrest in the 1960s. Ever since being placed on the National Register of Historic Places, however, efforts are being made to give this landmark a second life. Take a look.
Hidden in plain sight and rising above an overgrown valley is a connection to Cleveland's past. A bridge that once connected two neighborhoods.
On the one side of the bridge, which is now branded as Slavic Village, was a neighborhood known as Jackowa. And that was the neighborhood that was centered around St. Hyacinth Church. It was largely Polish. It was an industrial neighborhood. Like most Cleveland neighborhoods, these were walking neighborhoods. People didn't have cars. And it sort of was a little community there. Then across the ravine, which is Kingsbury Run, you had the Kinsman neighborhood, which at one point was Jewish and Hungarian, and also ethnic. And the thing that held them together was this bridge.
The original wooden trestle bridge opened in 1909, replaced 20 years later by a steel suspension bridge.
We know it as Sideaway Bridge now. It's the only suspension bridge in Cleveland.
And it's a bridge with a notorious past, spanning Kingsbury Run, where victims of the Cleveland torso murders were discovered in the 1930s. In the 1960s, the bridge became a symbol of racial tension.
What's happening is the center of Cleveland, which is where many of the African Americans are living at the time, because it's de facto segregated. With the Great Migration coming during and after the war, the population increased. Some of it moved eastward into the Huff and Glenville neighborhoods, and others followed, went along Woodland and up along Kinsman, so that neighborhood shifted to African American.
During the 1950s and 60s, blighted homes in Cleveland were torn down while new public housing was going up, notably Garden Valley.
I grew up on 78th Street near Kinsman. It's a very nice little street. There were frame houses, so my parents and their 6 children lived in a little house on 78th Street. It was a good life. And I remember when we moved to 78th Street, there were no Garden Valley housing projects on 78th Street. We watched them demolish houses, and the neighborhood flipped very quickly in the early 1960s. As those families moved out and those houses were torn down, and then the brick apartment buildings and townhouses were built. And they were very nice too in the early years.
And so you have an African American population across from the white ethnic population, and the children go to the public school. It's called Todd Public School. It's on the Yetskova side, and they come over the bridge. So you have black children coming through, mostly a white community at that time.
And if people in the neighborhood weren't using the bridge, they were aware of it. Dr. Regina Williams and her siblings didn't cross Sidaway to get to school. They attended schools near the Kinsman neighborhood.
The bridge was something that I always admired from a distance. You know, we could always look toward the other end. We were warned very early on in life that you don't go there. This is early 1960s, and I had no business going over there. I was a little kid, but we all had bicycles, and we would ride through the neighborhood. 78th Street to 71st, that's not so far as a little kid to go on your bike, but you don't dare think about going across that bridge. And that problem was solved for us, right, in 1966 with the Huff riots.
And somebody on the Slavic village at Yetskova side of the bridge decides that they want to close the bridge down, so they begin to pull up some of the boards which form the basis of the bridge, and they try to set fire to it. And so the bridge is impassable. And basically, that's basically putting a border between the white community and the black community. That's what we're looking at here. And it's never replaced. So the bridge has been closed since 1966 since then. So it is a symbol of racial divide in Cleveland.
More than 50 years have passed since the Sidaway Bridge has been in operation, parts of it claimed by nature, yet most of the structure still intact while a question still lingers. Could it once again be used as a connector between Kinsman and Slavic Village?
There's not a ton of discussion around it. It's more one of those things you mention and people are like, wait, where's that? You know, we have a suspension bridge in Cleveland?
But it's gained more recognition after being placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2022 for its significance in the civil rights movement.
Kind of nice that people are kind of recognizing that we have it and that there's a value to it and there's a lot of history there.
In early 2023, Cleveland City Council also granted the bridge landmark status. The bridge sits in the Ward 5 district where Councilman Richard Starr grew up.
I learned about Sidaway Bridge when I was a kid. When I think of the Sidaway Bridge, I think of a bridge that was bridging the gap to different neighborhoods. The bridge has been closed for some time now, and throughout that time period, some development has spearheaded and occurred. What I mean by that is we now have Opportunity Corridor, and one of my plans and goals for Opportunity Corridor is to be able to do exactly what the name of that project is, bring opportunity to residents in Ward 5 to take advantage of those, meaning if we refurbish this bridge, get it up and running, it can really help our neighborhood.
That would take the work of several different organizations, including the City Planning Commission, community development corporations on either side of the bridge, and structural engineers to determine the scope of the work.
With some structural analysis and that kind of thing, you know, I think it could be put back into use. There's certainly a need for connecting neighborhoods. The times have changed so much since it was built with, you know, the access to automobiles and that sort of thing that, you know, footbridges aren't really something that we think of or use too often anymore, but they can be great ways to, you know, get around a neighborhood or from one area to another without, you know, having to drive around the block.
But a pedestrian bridge where kids can walk over and hang out with their friends, come back, you know, no problems, that would be great. And if a bridge can do that, bring two communities together, east side of the Cuyahoga River, why not? I'd walk across it this time. I didn't walk across in the early 60s. I'd walk across it.
And now, here's a look at a few notable dates in art history. And that wraps it up for this edition of Artistic Horizons. For more arts and culture, visit WPBSTV.org. Until next time, I'm Mark Cernero. Thanks for watching.